In our last video, we told you about an amazing moment in world politics. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney stood up to President Donald Trump and said something powerful. Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian. We explained how this brave statement came to be and why it mattered so much. But guess what? That was just the beginning. Since then, things between Canada and the United States have gotten even more tense. These two countries have been best friends and neighbors for over 150 years. But now, their relationship is falling apart in ways nobody expected. In this video, we're going to show you what's happened since that famous speech. From trade wars to military preparations, from new deals with China to online fights between leaders, the friendship between Canada and America is being tested like never before. Let's dive in and see what's going on. After Prime Minister Carney's powerful speech in Switzerland, President Trump didn't stay quiet for long. Just hours later, on January 23, 2026, Trump did something that shocked everyone. He took to his social media platform, Truth Social, and posted what looked like an official letter. In it, Trump uninvited Canada from something called the Board of Peace. Here's what Trump wrote. Dear Prime Minister Carney, please let this letter serve to represent that the Board of Peace is withdrawing its invitation to you regarding Canada's joining what will be the most prestigious board of leaders ever assembled at any time. Let's break this down. The Board of Peace is Trump's new project that's supposed to help rebuild Gaza and solve world conflicts. He invited countries to join, but they have to pay $1 billion to get a permanent seat. Canada had said they were interested but weren't going to pay the $1 billion. Trump got mad about this. But the real reason he uninvited Canada? Carney stood up to him. This wasn't professional diplomacy. This was like a kid uninviting someone from their birthday party because they got their feelings hurt. But it showed something important. Trump takes things personally, and he's willing to punish countries that don't agree with him. Since our last video, the economic pressure on Canada has gotten even more intense. Throughout 2025, President Trump put tariffs on Canadian products coming into America. Let's explain what happened. Imagine you're selling lemonade to your neighbor for $1. Now imagine someone says you have to pay them 35 cents before you can sell it. You'd have to charge your neighbor 1.35 instead, and they might not want to buy as much anymore. That's basically what a tariff does. In February 2025, Trump started with a 25% tariff on most Canadian goods. By August 2025, he raised it to 35%. He added special tariffs on steel and aluminum at 50%, cars and car parts at 25%, copper at 50%, and lumber at 35%. These are huge numbers. They make Canadian products much more expensive in America. There's one important thing protecting most Canadian businesses: the CUSMA exemption. CUSMA stands for Canada, United States, Mexico Agreement. It's the trade deal between the three countries. It says that products made according to certain rules can cross borders without paying tariffs. Here's the problem. This protection might not last much longer. Circle this date on your calendar, July 1st, 2026. That's when Canada, the United States, and Mexico will have their first official review of the CUSMA trade agreement. What was supposed to be a simple check-in has turned into something that could change everything. In the best case, all three countries agree to extend CUSMA for another 16 years, and everyone keeps trading freely. In the middle case, they don't extend it, but keep reviewing it every year. In the worst case, the agreement falls apart, and all of Trump's tariffs hit Canada with full force. Trump has made it clear he's willing to walk away from the deal he himself negotiated during his first term as president. He's using the review as leverage to get what he wants from Canada. Without CUSMA protection, Canada's economy could shrink significantly. Many Canadians could lose their jobs, products would become more expensive on both sides of the border, companies would have to completely reorganize how they do business. Experts warn that this could cause permanent economic damage that lasts for years. Prime Minister Carney realized Canada needs a backup plan. If America isn't a reliable partner anymore, Canada needs to find other countries to trade with. So he did something controversial. He went to China. In January 2026, Carney became the first Canadian Prime Minister to visit China since 2017. Why hadn't anyone gone in so long? Canada and China had a major fight that started in 2018, and they basically stopped talking to each other for years. But with Trump making things difficult, Carney decided it was time to make up with China. The deal Carney made with Chinese President Xi Jinping includes several major agreements. Canada agreed to let Chinese electric cars into the country with only a 6.1% tariff, down from 100%. China reduced tariffs on Canadian canola seed, which is an important crop, from 85% to 15%. The two countries also agreed to work together more closely in what they're calling a strategic partnership. For farmers, this is great news. They can sell more canola to China, which is a huge market. For car workers, this is scary. Chinese electric vehicles flooding into Canada could hurt Canadian car companies and cost jobs. For everyone, partnering with China means dealing with a country that has very different values than Canada. China doesn't have the same kind of democracy or human rights protections that Canada does. When reporters asked Carney about human rights in China, he said, We take the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. In other words, he's being practical rather than idealistic. During his trip to China, Carney talked about a new world order and praised the partnership with China at a time when the United States was being unpredictable. This was basically Canada saying, we can't count on America anymore, so we're making new friends. For America's closest ally to say this out loud was shocking. The Trump administration was not happy about Canada's China deal. U.S. Trade Representative Jameson Greer called it problematic and added ominously, in the long run, they're not going to like having made that deal. This sounds like a threat. The message is clear. If you go behind our back to China, we'll make you pay for it. Since our last video, Trump has continued and even increased his talk about taking over Canada. Trump has posted pictures showing Canada covered with the American flag. He's repeatedly suggested Canada should become America's 51st state. He's called the idea not the worst thing in the world. What started as weird jokes now feels more serious, especially combined with everything else happening. Here's where things get really serious. In response to all these tensions, Canada has quietly started military preparations that would have seemed crazy just a year ago. In May 2025, Canada's top military leaders signed a directive to massively expand the country's reserve forces. Currently, there are about 27,000 reserve soldiers. The new goal is 100,000 reserve soldiers. Plus, they want to add 300,000 citizen soldiers in a supplementary reserve. That's adding 373,000 people who could be called up if needed. This supplementary reserve is something completely new. The plan is to ask public servants, meaning government workers, to volunteer. They'd give them 1 week of training on firearms, driving military trucks, and operating drones. They'd do 1 week of training each year. They'd be kept ready to be called up in an emergency. The standards would be easier than regular military, with less strict age limits, easier physical requirements, and no uniforms needed. The official explanation is that these volunteers would help with forest fires, natural disasters, and national emergencies. But let's be real. You don't train 300,000 people to use firearms and drones just for forest fires. Canada is preparing for a world where they might need to defend themselves. Against whom? The question hangs in the air, but everyone knows what they're thinking about. Canada has also increased defense spending to reach 2% of GDP by March 2026. They've committed to reaching 5% of GDP by 2035. They've announced plans to spend over $80 billion on the military in the next 5 years. They've started discussions about missile defense systems. These are the actions of a country that no longer feels safe relying on its traditional ally. Let's look at some important numbers to understand why this situation is so complicated. 75% of Canada's manufactured goods go to the United States. $2.5 billion worth of trade crosses the border every single day. Canada has a trade surplus, meaning they sell more than they buy, of about $63 billion per year. Canada's economy is deeply connected to America's. You can't just unplug that connection overnight without causing major problems. Think of it like this. If 75% of your weekly allowance came from one person, and they suddenly said, I might stop giving you money, you'd be in big trouble. That's what Canada is facing, but with billions of dollars and millions of jobs. Prime Minister Carney has set ambitious goals. He wants to double non-U.S. exports over the next decade. He wants to increase exports to China by 50% by 2030. He wants to build a more competitive, sustainable, and independent economy. But experts say this will be incredibly difficult. You can't replace your biggest customer overnight, especially when that customer is right next door. As we get closer to the July review, here's what both sides are thinking about. Trump and his team are expected to push for changes to car manufacturing rules, wanting more U.S.-made parts. They want access to Canadian dairy markets because Canada currently protects its farmers. They want concessions on lumber and other resources. They want restrictions on Chinese companies operating in North America. Overall, they want to win more from the deal. Canada desperately needs to keep the CUSMA agreement alive. They need to remove or reduce the current tariffs. They need some predictability and stability for businesses. They need recognition as an equal partner, not a subordinate. America has advantages in this negotiation. They have a much bigger economy. They can hurt Canada more than Canada can hurt America. They control access to the world's largest consumer market. But Canada has advantages too. America needs Canadian resources, especially oil and electricity. Canada can partner with other countries like China. American businesses want CUSMA to continue. Trump faces midterm elections in November 2026, and if his party loses, his power weakens. This fight between Canada and America isn't just about these two countries. It's a sign of bigger changes happening in the world. For decades after World War II, countries tried to follow certain rules. Allies work together. Trade should be free and fair. Disputes get resolved through international organizations. Democracy and human rights matter. In his speech in Switzerland, Carney essentially said, that era is over. We need to accept the new reality. According to Carney, here's the new reality. Great powers like the US and China do whatever they want. Smaller countries need to band together to protect themselves. Economic threats are used as weapons. You can't count on old friendships anymore. Other U.S. allies are watching closely. If Canada can't trust America, who can? If Trump treats his closest neighbor this way, what about other countries? Should everyone start looking for new partners? Here's the million-dollar question, or really, the billions of dollars question. Can Canada and America fix their relationship? There are reasons for hope. The economies are too connected, and breaking apart would hurt both countries badly. American businesses want CUSMA. Many U.S. companies depend on Canadian trade. There's still time before July, and the review could lead to compromises. History matters too. These countries have been partners for over 150 years, but there are also reasons for worry. Trump doesn't back down. He sees everything as a contest to win. Canada has shown it will look elsewhere. The China deal proved Canada won't just give in. Both sides feel disrespected. Trump thinks Canada is ungrateful. Canada thinks Trump is a bully. The damage might already be done. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. As we move towards summer 2026, here's what to watch for. Between February and June 2026, there will be intense discussions between U.S. and Canadian officials. Business groups from both countries will be lobbying their governments. Trump will be testing how far he can push. Carney will be working on backup plans with other countries. On July 1st, 2026, the big day arrives. The Free Trade Commission, which includes representatives from all three countries, will meet and decide, do we extend CUSMA for another 16 years? Do we keep reviewing it year by year? Or do we let it fall apart? Then in November 2026, the U.S. has midterm elections. If Democrats win control of Congress, they might put pressure on Trump to be more reasonable. If Republicans keep control, Trump will feel empowered to be even tougher. You might be thinking, I'm not Canadian or American. Why does this matter to me? Or if you are from one of these countries, I'm just a kid. Why should I care about trade deals? Here's why this matters. It affects prices. If Canada and the U.S. have a trade war, things cost more for everyone. It affects jobs. Millions of people's livelihoods depend on this relationship. It's about the future. The world you're growing up in is being shaped by these decisions. It shows how countries treat each other. If allies can't trust each other, what happens to global cooperation? Let's sum up what we've learned. Canada and the U.S. are in their worst fight in modern history. Trump has hit Canada with heavy tariffs. Carney has turned to China for help. A crucial review is coming in July 2026. Canada is even preparing its military for uncertain times. The stakes include billions of dollars in trade, millions of jobs, the future of North American cooperation, and a signal to the rest of the world about how alliances work. The question is, can these two neighboring countries find a way to work together, or will pride, politics, and competing interests tear apart one of history's most successful partnerships? The next few months will be critical. As spring turns to summer, and as the July deadline approaches, the tension will only increase. Will cooler heads prevail? Will common sense win out over ego? Will the deep economic ties between these countries prove stronger than political differences? Or will we witness the breakup of a relationship that has lasted over a century and a half? We'll be following this story closely and bringing you updates as they happen. What do you think? Can Canada and America work this out? Should Canada be partnering with China? Is Trump's tough approach helping or hurting America? Let us know in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next update when the July review begins. This is history happening in real time, and you're witnessing it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.